Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and today I'm very glad to have on our show Steve Barrett. Steve is our Director of Public Works here in town. With a broad skill set, Steve manages and supervises the many aspects of the infrastructure that hold this town together. Roads, bridges, parks, utilities, construction projects, and water in all of its forms, from waste to flood to snow, and probably some hail and rain in between there too. He works with every town department, troubleshooting from the hip, getting the jobs done and bringing people together through building strong relationships and clear communication. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you on the show. Yeah, now we're going to find out what someone in public works actually does. We know about the position. We know also, I think most of us know, that this is the largest department in town, too.
It is, yes.
Yes. And it includes how many people do you have working?
Well, we have 5 divisions, and there's 35 people.
Wow.
And there's, from wastewater to drinking water to fleet maintenance of vehicles, distribution and storage. Those are the crews that take care of all the water supply and the wastewater in between the two facilities,
Right.
between the water and wastewater and the wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty large crew. We also have an on-staff engineer to help us for planning projects and design.
And I think that's something that I hadn't thought of in terms of public works, is that you have a lot to do with the ongoing projects in town.
We're heavily involved in projects that not only our own projects, but then if a state has a project with a bridge, we're involved because of the infrastructure, traffic patterns that can affect the whole town. So we're pretty heavily involved.
You have this large staff, and you have different supervisors, I would assume, as well.
Yeah, each division has a leading supervisor, and I do have an assistant. He's classified as the highway utility superintendent. It's Dan Tyler, and he's been with me a couple years, and he's a fine young man and very talented.
Yeah.
So he comes from a background of construction. Also, he went to Vermont Tech. He has his engineering tech degree, and he worked for VTrans, which is the transportation arm of the state. So he has a wealth of experience, and that's helpful. So together, we're a good team.
You were born and raised in Brattleboro, going back to the beginning here, and your family has gone back generations in Brattleboro. Is that right?
Yeah, we're pretty deeply rooted in the community. I was brought up on Whipple Street, which is a couple blocks from here.
Yep.
I lived 30 years on Reading Place, which is about 3 blocks down, and then I currently live on High Street. So I'm still in the same neighborhood
You are.
after 60 plus years.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. There's been a lot of changes, but I'm from here.
Yes.
My grandfather ran a shop on Elliott Street for many years, 50 years. It was called the Auto Top Shop, and then his father ran a harness shop for horses, to repair horse harnesses.
Really? Where
on
was
Elliott
that?
Street also.
That was Elliott Street, yeah.
So a lot of history, a lot of depth as far as the community goes.
Yeah. Was it both sides of the family?
Both sides.
Really?
My grandfather actually came down from Proctor area. Of course, we're Irish descent, so we came from Ireland, went to Canada, and then migrated into the United States. And then my grandfather was assigned down here through the telephone company, so that's how that side got to Brattleboro.
Have you seen historical pictures of your grandparents?
I have, and I've seen pictures also of the railroad where some of the family worked on the railroad and such, so some old pictures. Yeah.
They're fascinating, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When you have a tie to a community, it's not just looking at old pictures. It's like, oh my God, there's that.
Yeah, we're tied to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you were in high school, you actually, you did a couple different things in high school that were kind of interesting, that gave you some background to what you do now.
Yeah, when I was probably a sophomore, the high school started developing a careers program. And within that, there was a law enforcement program. There was a firefighting course, and then there was also building trades, which I took all 3. I found it fascinating to be able to go to school and then to also go into these trades, these elements. Yeah. And it was the first fire class and the first law enforcement model that they had tried.
In a high school?
In Brattleboro High School.
In Brattleboro.
So it was pretty exciting to be part of that first unit. And we learned from the firemen here in town, and they brought instructors in, and we were all certified. And so I actually joined the fire department my last year of high school, and I was on as a call person, which is a volunteer with a slight pay, as I might say. I think it was maybe $300 a year back then. But that started my interest in the fire service for sure.
Yeah.
And my dad was a deputy chief in the fire service, so there was some interest there.
Yeah.
But it really sparked my interest with town government.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was sort of the beginning for you, of seeing how you started seeing how things work together.
And it was kind of my anchor.
Yeah.
The fire department, it was quite disciplined. You went to classes on a regular basis, and you got educated, and then you could go up through the ranks. I ended up being a captain on the ladder company, and it was pretty exciting as a young person to be able to learn how to drive the fire trucks and drive them and operate them and go to fires. It's pretty exciting. So that kept me in the game.
Yeah.
So that was as a call firefighter, and then I did other jobs during that time. I did construction work. I did all different types of work.
Right.
And that was really my interest, was the fire service at the time.
Can you talk a little bit about how it is to be a fireman? I mean, I know that's a very broad question, but what was it about that specifically that was of interest to you?
I think it was a huge physical challenge. Of course, I was in sports. I was in, I played football and basketball, and I was in track. And it's very physically demanding, mentally demanding, and it was a real challenge. It was, going into a burning building. Everybody's running out of the building, you're going in.
Yeah.
And there's something about that challenge that I really wanted to grasp.
Yes.
And enjoyed it. And it was, the people in that service are just amazing. They say it's a brother and sisterhood. It truly is.
Yes.
Because you work with those people, you go on the front lines with them, and it's, it's just so challenging. I found it just to be great.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, and you're depending on each other too as a team when you're going
Yep.
when you're going in like that. Do you have any close calls?
We had close calls
Yeah.
over the years, and we actually had a firefighter that died when I was on duty one night on Canal Street. And then we had cases where we were going in to save people, and we had some pretty tough situations.
Yeah.
But you got through it, and everybody stuck together. But it was, it's a life experience for sure.
Yes, and it was part of the job. That was what you did.
That's
and
what
that's
you
what
did.
you're doing. Yeah. You also spent a little time working at the retreat.
I did. When I was in high school, it seemed like everybody that was brought up in Brattleboro worked at the retreat.
Really?
And there was various jobs. My brother worked at the farm as a farmhand in the summer. I worked in the cafeterias. I started out washing dishes. And then I worked in the stock room, which you would distribute stocks and supplies. And it was a whole city by itself at the time. And a lot of the patients there were just people that had some challenges, but they worked there full time. They worked 40 hours a week. And then they had a stipend. They had a room. Yeah. They had 3 meals a day, and they gave them, and they paid them too.
Huh.
So there was different levels of people that you would interact with.
Yeah.
And so it was just so big, it seemed, as being in high school, to go into this facility.
Yeah. It's a huge campus. It's
Yeah.
the biggest campus in town, really, and compared to the high school.
And all the staff wore white.
Oh, really?
I just remember walking through the streets in the morning with my white pants and my white shirt on, and then you'd see somebody else on the other corner, and we're all headed to the retreat to go work. So
I think that's so interesting, because to have high school kids working there at that time made it much more a part of the community too.
Yeah, I mean, again, like my brother worked at the farm, and they really engaged the kids to work, and they hayed and did farm chores, and so there's different things. Maybe you had a different interest. For me at the time, the job that was available was in the kitchen, so that was fine with me.
Yeah, it's
You
really
just wanted that extra spending money, right?
Yeah, that as well as you had a very short walk to work.
That's right.
I was thinking about this when I asked you on the show that at some point, public works, we're sort of familiar with what public works means in a community, but at some point that description changed to infrastructure. And I'm assuming that was at a time when there was a change in the job itself or the definition of it.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of just basic skills, a lot of laboring in the public works sector. But over time, what happened was we had the Clean Water Act, and our first wastewater treatment plant was built in 1965. Okay, prior to that, everything just went into the river. So then it demanded, employees that had a different skill set. And with the water treatment, our first water treatment plant went in the early 70s, and then our main water treatment plant was constructed in 89. So that changed the way that we do business, and it changed what we do.
Yeah.
Before it was very, basic service. Now it's expanded quite a bit.
And there's the whole environmental piece now in relation to water, especially, obviously.
The environmental piece is huge. From the Clean Water Act again to we have to comply with the clean water. We have to do a lot of tests. The drinking water is the same, and now we're being introduced into the stormwater sector.
Oh.
So we're trying to protect the rivers and streams. So there's a lot more care taken to regular rainwater or stormwater.
Looking back to before,
the solution to pollution was dilution. That's what we were told when we first started.
Really?
The solution to pollution is dilution.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And that's what everybody did. It's like,
yes, all up and down the river.
Yeah.
And every river in the country. It's the Green Mountain Water Environment Association, and you're certified.
That's an association that helps our water and wastewater operators through their certification. The state of Vermont has a licensing program similar to any other occupation. In fact, we were just put into the same licensing program as if you were an attorney or anyone else. And so the employees are required to go to the proper classes and actually to put a certain amount of time on the job so they have the ability, kind of like an internship.
Yeah.
And then once they pass their certification, they have to pass a certification for the type of plant that they're operating. So if you had a very small town with a well, then you have a certification for that level. When you have a water treatment plant such as ours that is capable of 3 million gallons a day, then it ramps it up to a different level of certification.
Water is one part of your job, but your job includes so much more, and it seems like it's such an intricate combination of skills and responsibilities and management. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's there's so many different disciplines that we're dealing with. I've been fortunate because over time I started at the bottom and I worked my way up. So that I was able to learn the different aspects of the job. But when you talk about your basic, your highway functions, then it gets greater because now we're dealing with winter maintenance and salt and how much you're going to apply. We now have computers in the truck that give us an application rate, so you're only doing so many pounds per mile. So you're not hurting the environment, plus you're only putting out the amount of product that you need.
Right.
And then you're talking drinking water and wastewater, and then we're talking bridges. So there's all types of different disciplines, which I truly love. It's just,
you do?
It's just fun. Yeah. It's not just one job every day the same. It's so different.
Every day, every season. Yes.
Every day is different. You don't know where you're going to go or what you're going to do on any given day.
Or what the weather's going to be.
That's right.
And a lot depends on what the weather's going to be. Luckily, you grew up here, so you're kind of used to variables in that. You talk about how you love your job and the culture, your work culture that you really try to establish with your staff, with everyone who works with you.
Yeah, I mean, we've changed over time. There used to be, I'm the boss, you go do the job, and that's it. Kind of almost like a military type atmosphere. We work together as a team, as a strong team, and we don't use the word team all the time, but we know we are a good team.
Yeah.
And any of the divisions that need assistance or help, the others are always there for them.
Yeah.
And that spreads all the way out through the whole town. It could be the town manager's office needs something, or the police department, or the fire department.
Right.
So we all work closely together. And that environment is one of, we got a job to do, let's do the job, and then try to enjoy it while you're there and do the best job you can.
Yeah.
And so I think once you foster that environment and you have the employees that support that, then it's in motion. And then if somebody new comes in, we want you to do the job right.
Right.
And there'd be pressure from the other employees to make sure that you do the right thing, and
Yes.
it's like just making sure things are done right and correctly.
Yeah, and you are all the time troubleshooting a bit, right? Like every day pretty much has some amount of that going on.
And we receive a lot of feedback from the public for things that come up. We also have our eye out there to look to see. When I drive down the street, it's probably different than somebody else. I'm looking. is, if that hydrant okay, or is the street light crooked, or,
Yeah.
all those things. Is there a pothole? We need
That's
to
right.
document.
Yeah.
So all those things come into mind. Is if I'm walking in the street, is there a trip hazard on the sidewalk?
Yeah.
And the employees do the same, and then they'll report back to us.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to keep your eye open.
All the time. Yeah. And do you get a lot of feedback from the public?
We do. We get a lot of good positive feedback.
Uh-huh.
We get some negative, like anything else, if something isn't done right. We pride ourselves in, if people do call us, to follow up.
Mm-hmm.
This COVID's a little bit different, but our practice has been to do a face-to-face, to go out to look and investigate. And even
Yeah.
during COVID, it's worked fine because we can keep our social distance.
Yeah.
But sometimes to really get the picture of what one's concern
Yeah.
is to go out and look at it and investigate and follow up.
Yeah.
What may sound as something that really isn't a problem, many times ends up being a problem, or a situation that needs to be corrected, or even a safety problem.
Right, and you don't know until
But sometimes it's hard for someone to convey. I know when we had a new office manager, what's the difference between a storm drain, a sewer manhole, and it's some people call them a DI, and there's this other language that's used that, we have to understand what the public's trying to tell us.
Yes, right.
Sometimes they think it's the storm water that's running over when it's actually the sewer.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
very important to us to go out and to figure that out.
And take a look, right. All of the town departments, there's so many different town departments, and you are working together in many different kinds of ways. I think people are often surprised to know that the library is a town department. But can you talk a little bit about how, what would be a scenario when you would be calling on other people?
Yeah, there's all kinds of scenarios. For instance, like the fire department may help us during a water main break, or we may help them during a fire. Of course, water supply is a big element. The police department, we engage with them when, they may need a accident. There's an accident, and we may need to have our sweeper come out, pick up glass, and we may need to detour traffic. With the town clerk's office, we may go to them and seek assistance for deed research to figure out or determine where a particular wall is, or ownership. So all the different departments, we help each other.
Right.
To work through the different, and the library, we've called upon them for research on different aspects.
Yeah.
And we've called the Historical Society for assistance.
Yes.
We all kind of work together.
Yeah.
So.
As I've mentioned before on different shows, the size of our community kind of allows that to be a much more fluid situation.
Yes.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
dealing with people who many of whom you've known for decades.
Yes.
That you've been working with.
And I think we're small enough so that you get to know all the different people in the different departments.
Yes, right.
Which is nice.
And neighborhoods as
and
well.
Neighborhoods, yeah. We know all the. There seems to be a mayor of each neighborhood.
That's interesting. Yeah. It would be interesting to have you write a memoir at some point. And so, how has the pandemic affected you?
Well, at first, we have to, think about, during the pandemic, clean water is essential.
Right.
And wastewater, it has to happen. We have to be there.
Yeah.
So our operators never missed a beat.
Oh.
We pretty much worked through the whole pandemic.
Did you? Yeah.
What we did was we divided our shifts so that we'd have some insurance in case someone did get sick. So the separation was key, but we pretty much worked through the whole pandemic.
Wow.
So
and I was thinking about Irene when Irene came through, and if that was a kind of situation where it opened your eyes up to a whole, was it a surprise?
Irene was huge.
Yeah.
And we had prepared for it as best as we could, but we never expected the damage that we got. We opened our emergency operation center, and we had all the department heads in the emergency operations center, and we had all our assistants out on the ground. And then the storm came, and it just took over.
Yeah.
And so we were working around the clock at the time. I know we'd lost many bridges. Route 9 was gone.
Right.
All kinds of bridges. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But the way that everybody snapped back was incredible. Help from the public.
Yes.
Our crews did a tremendous job, along with the fire department, police, everybody, and all the other smaller departments kicked in to help out because there was so much to do. And we had FEMA coming in, and there was just this huge, disaster.
Yes.
but it really worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of infrastructure back in service in a real short period of time.
And did that change any of the things that you did on a regular basis?
I think one of the things where we had an advantage in this town is because we were preparing on a regular basis for Vermont Yankee problems.
Yeah.
We had a system of command. We had a command post, and we actually had people assigned to all the elements of an emergency management situation. It's very unique, and people from the library that were communication people to get a hold of people from the school. We had a school person there. We had the police, fire. So you had all these people in a room, and we practiced on a regular basis, so that when this storm did come, we had that knowledge and we had the ability to work as a team out of a command post.
Yes.
Which a lot of communities don't have that, or they might have it, but they don't exercise it.
Right.
So this was, I think we were fortunate that we had all that in place because of Vermont Yankee, like it or not like it.
Exactly.
That was one of the things that probably benefited us by having Vermont Yankee close to our community.
It sounds like a huge advantage in terms of preparation and being prepared.
And knowing where the resources were.
Right.
I mean, it carried out to every disaster where, the Red Cross and all the other elements that are needed, the things that supplies for the workers on the, they're out in the field. So all that was pretty much there. It was all in place.
Yeah. Big surprise, though, right?
It was a big surprise, yeah.
Steve, with ongoing changes that are always happening and all the changes in the environment, especially these days, I know that you try to keep on top of things.
Yeah, we try not to get complacent.
Yeah.
And then, we have it's exciting. We have some young people that have joined us here the last few years. So we have a nice blend of people from in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Terrific. Which is a beautiful blend because you have experience, and then you have youth, you have energy, and you have new knowledge.
Right. And
experience and so we've embraced it. So as we've moved along, I remember my first bag phone, before cell phones.
Right.
And when I was working for the town, we had a SCADA system, which is a computerized system that was put in the 80s to operate the water system and operate the facility and open and close valves remotely, which was like the Jetsons, of its time. And that was pre-internet, and it was pre-cell phones. So as this has changed, we continue to change. Yeah. And I just really enjoy it, and I think it's a learning curve, and also we can become more efficient. So all those things combined are exciting, and it's good to keep on top of all the changes. And I think it's fun too.
And you're bringing electric cars into town.
Electric cars, yeah. We just got our last one 2 years ago, and then we're introducing 2 more. We actually tried an electric bike and it was pretty exciting to bring it up. The local bike shops lent us a bike and to watch the people at Public Works go out and take a ride on it.
And what were you using it for?
Well, what we were looking at is for water meter reading or to run errands and things. They got these new cargo bikes. They're not new, but they've been around for a while, and there's a lot of people in this town that embrace them. We have a strong bicycle community, and so we've looked pretty seriously of having these bikes. And so the advantage is, everything in Brattleboro is in a hill. Well, these power-assisted bikes, it makes the hills pretty easy.
It makes it doable, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then it makes more sense that, if we have a seasonal help and they're painting hydrants, they don't need to go out with a motor vehicle. They could take a bike. Yeah. And they could load it up with the paint and everything else. Yeah. So
that's so great. It's things like that make a huge difference in the imprint, the footprint and the imprint in the town.
And I think it fits with the community. The community's ever changing, but conservation, environmentally, we're always thinking about these things as a community. Yeah. So it kind of follows the lead with that.
You mentioned the bridge, which is going to be happening pretty soon, and I know that the town is giving updates and has recently, I believe, done an update on that. What are you foreseeing? Can you give us some kind of a snapshot of that project?
Well, it's going to be pretty interesting. Vernon Road, the elevation is going to change 10 feet. It's going to go up in the air 10 feet. And the reason for that is the new bridge is going to come across, and it's going to go over the railroad tracks.
Oh, it is.
Years ago, there was plans for a bridge, and the governor of Vermont and the governor of New Hampshire couldn't really collaborate on how the bridge. New Hampshire was strong. It needs to go over the tracks.
Yeah.
And Vermont was like, well, we're not sure at this time. It would affect a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
So everything got put on hold for many years.
Yes.
So with this new bridge, it was pretty much settled that the bridge will go over the trains, which makes sense, especially with our neighbors. We have Rescue Inc. here and fire
Yes,
as mutual
right.
aid,
Right.
and you stop because of the train. So
Yeah.
the project is pretty big. It's going to take a few years. It's going to start in New Hampshire and then work its way over into Vermont.
Oh, uh-huh.
But there'll be work done as they're doing work in New Hampshire. We're going to have Public Works is going to install a new water main. We'll have that contracted out, and then we're also looking at the infrastructure as a whole. So the project will have, at first, it'll be kind of business as usual with restricted traffic on Vernon Road, and there'll be some closures on Vernon Road too.
Right.
And detours, we're going to have to look at Cotton Mill Hill and South Main Street
Yes.
and Fairground.
Yeah.
So it's going to reroute some truck traffic, and it's going to have an impact on the town.
Yes, it will.
And then in the end, they'll have an impact because all that traffic's going to get dropped off onto Route 142, Vernon Road,
Yeah.
and it will pretty much make the leg that went to the old bridges kind of more of a drive
Yes.
now to the Whetstone
It will.
Station. It'll just be like a small driveway.
It will stay open.
It'll stay open, but
existing.
it'll be an access point.
Yes, right.
But it won't have those high demands.
Right.
So it'll change the dynamics of that intersection.
Yes, it will. It will.
So it'll be interesting. I think it's exciting. It's something that, a lot of people didn't think they'd ever see happen. And
That's
the
right.
old bridges are in very much need of getting replaced. So.
Yes, well, that's the driving force.
Yeah.
Something like I know the museum, Brattleboro Museum and Arts Center is thinking of expanding and doing a new building. Would you be involved in something like that as well?
We are, even with private business, when they expand
Yeah.
to some level, especially because of the infrastructure.
Right.
Like if somebody's going to build a new building or a new industry comes to town, we have to make sure that we have the capacity for the water and
Yes.
the capacity for the wastewater.
Right.
And then we're involved also with, when a new business comes, how that will impact traffic.
Yes. So you're brought in
Yeah.
at, I would assume, various points in
The
the
planning
project.
department keeps us,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
We interact with the planning department, and
Right.
they keep us up to speed on the projects that come along.
Yeah, so when folks have questions about all of these things, they can look in the paper because there's always a warning about the different meetings that are coming up to be informed about these new projects.
Yeah, I think the town's really good about, letting people know about the meetings that come up, and what's happening. And they'll this project will probably have a communication person.
Which one?
with the Hinsdale Bridge.
The bridge, yes.
That will have a specialized communication person.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And that's what they did when they did the state, when they did the I-91 bridge, the large bridge over Route 30. They
Yeah.
had a communication person.
Yeah, yeah.
And we do at a smaller level for our projects also.
Yeah, yes.
So
Well, you're pretty much the communications person in general, on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me here.
Yes, we will be hearing more from you, and folks just need to know that if they need to get in touch, they can get in touch with you. They can call you, find out.
Anytime.
Yep, anytime. You're available. You're a public servant.
That's right.
In the very best sense of the
Yeah.
word. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks to all of you for tuning in today and for hearing more about our town and all of the underpinnings that keep this town together, and all of the people like Steve who are doing their job and doing their best to make Brattleboro an even better and more wonderful place. We will see you next week.